Hello students, we'll continue with our development of the foregut. So in this section, we'll be discussing the development of stomach and the duodenum. So how the stomach is developing. So stomach, it appears, there is a certain dilatation at the fourth peak just beneath the esophagus. So it is present just below the septum transversum. Now you can see these red ones are the ventral and the dorsal mesentery, and the blue ones is the vagus nerve. That is, this one is the left side, so left and the right vagus, and this one is the ventral and the dorsal mesentery. So the thoracic foregut is elongated at the day 26th. So there is a fusiform dilation which appears in this foregut beneath the septum transversum. Now, this fusiform dilation is because of the it undergoes a differential development of the body wall. That is, the dorsolateral wall. It overgrows the ventral wall. So why this is happening? Because anteriorly in the ventral mesentery will be the septum transversum. So there is developing liver. So since the liver is enlarging, it is also gaining the hematopoietic function over here of the developing embryo. So there isn't sufficient space to occupy or to accommodate this liver. So to accommodate this developing liver, there is a rotation of the stomach, and so the ventral wall, it doesn't has much space to grow as compared to the dorsal wall. So this ventral wall will form the future lesser curvature, and the dorsolateral wall will form the future greater curvature. Now there is a 90-degree rotation around the vertical axis. Okay. And this fusiform dilation, the superior part, it will expand and it will form the cardiac and the fundus end. So after going the 90-degree rotation, so what happens now? This ventral will come to lie towards the right side, and the dorsal part will come to lie on the right side. So greater curvature, it occupies the left side of the body, and the ventral curvature will occupy the right. It will turn towards the right side of the body, and similarly, the left vagus comes to lie anteriorly, and the right vagus will goes posteriorly. So these are the after effects of this 90-degree rotation around the craniocaudal axis. Now there is furthermore 90-degree rotation around the anterior posterior axis. Now what happens after this rotation? The cardiac end, it will move towards the left, and the pyloric end, it will move towards the right, and the right side and upwards. So now this, because of these two rotations, the stomach comes to its to its position as that of an adult. So what are the factors which are leading to the rotation of the stomach? So firstly, I told you that is there is a rapid enlargement of the right lobe of the liver. So spleen also moves towards the left side. So to accommodate this enlarging liver, the stomach has to go to this 90-degree rotation, and then there is an active growth process. So to shift the dorsal mesogastrium to the to which causes this shift of the dorsal mesogastrium towards the left side. Now, because the dorsoventral the dorsal side of the body of the stomach is expanding more than the ventral side, so there is an active growth also in the dorsal mesogastrium. So dorsal mesogastrium is growing more than the ventral mesogastrium. So these are the two factors leading to the rotation of the stomach. So what are the after results of this rotation? So this one is before, this diagram is before the rotation, all lying in the same line. That is, this is the ventral side, this is the dorsal side, this one is the primitive gut of the stomach, this is the left vagus, this one is the right vagus. Now because of the enlarging liver, to accommodate it, it will rotate. So because of this 90-degree rotation, what happens? The developing the the succeeding part of the stomach will be the duodenum. So this presumptive duodenum, it will assume a C shape, right? Then what happens? This duodenum, this one is the duodenum, it is displaced towards the right until it lies against the body wall. So now it will become a secondarily retroperitoneal organ except its first part, that is the accepted its first 2.5 centimeters, which remains intraperitoneal, right? Then what happens? Because of this shift of the stomach towards the uh, because of its rotation of 90-degree around its craniocaudal axis, there is the formation of a pouch behind this stomach. So this recess dorsal to the stomach, it is known as the lesser sac of the peritoneal cavity, which one and the part which is anterior to it is the greater sac. Then the rest of the cavity is the greater sac, and finally this, because of this rotation, this reduces the communication between the greater and the lesser sac. Initially it was wide, this was the communication between the lesser and the ventral greater sac, and after the rotation this communication has become narrow, and this communication is now is known as the epiploic foramen of Winslow, which is lying just posterior to the lesser omentum. So how there is a formation of the greater omentum? Over here you can see the lesser sac, it enlarges due to progressive expansion of the dorsal mesogastrium. So over here you can see this one is the dorsal mesogastrium, and as there is a rotation of this stomach, so dorsal mesogastrium is also elongating. So since there is an expansion of this dorsal mesogastrium, so there is also an expansion of the lesser sac, because it is the space, so this space will also elongate, this space will also increase in size. Now the large and suspended fold of the mesogastrium, which overhangs from its greater curvature, is known as greater omentum, and it will drape over the inferior organs of the abdominal cavity. Now the posterior layer of this greater omentum, it also fuses with the mesentery of the transverse colon in the due course of time. So this is how, because of the excessive elongation or the development of the dorsal mesogastrium, the formation of greater omentum takes place. Now similarly, this one was the ventral mesentery. So here will be the developing liver. So this liver divides this ventral mesentery into two parts. First one is the lesser omentum and the falciform ligament, which is between the anterior abdominal wall and the liver. In the lesser omentum, it intervenes between the developing stomach and the liver. Now, what are the different recesses of the lesser sac? So this one is the developing stomach. This one is the mental bursa or the lesser sac, which is formed because of the rotation of the stomach. So the portion of the lesser sac, which is lying directly dorsal to the stomach, now it is known as the upper recess of the lesser sac. Now the cavity which is within the greater omentum, this is the fold of dorsal mesogastrium. Okay, so the cavity which is within this greater omentum now is known as the lower recess of the lesser sac. Now this, with the due course of time by the process of zygosis, this lower recess, it is obliterated in the fetal life. You must have read the first layer, the second layer, the third and the fourth layer of the greater omentum. The second and third layer, you have read that these two fuses in the embryonic life. So this is the process of zygosis, by which the second and the third layer now it has fused. So lesser sac, the lower recess of the lesser sac, it is also obliterated. Excuse me. Now the mesenteries of stomach. So the ventral mesogastrium, I told you, it is derived from the septum transversum. It is only present at the lower, it only extends from the lower part of the esophagus to till the duodenum, first part of the duodenum. So because of the growth of the liver, it divides this ventral mesentery or the ventral mesogastrium into a sickle shaped falciform ligament, which connects the liver to the anterior abdominal wall, and the lesser omentum, which intervenes between the developing stomach and the liver. Then is the dorsal mesogastrium, in which is there is developing spleen in its two folds. So this developing spleen, it will divide this dorsal mesogastrium into two parts. One is the gastrosplenic ligament, which intervenes between the spleen and the developing stomach, and the leno-renal ligament, which intervenes between the posterior body wall or the kidney and the spleen. Now there is a condition which is known as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Now this is a congenital defect due to the hypertrophy of the circular muscle layer of the pylorus. Now, the pyloric stenosis is one of the most common abnormalities of the stomach in infants. So it is more frequent in males than in females, and the presentation is normally it presents just after the first feed. So there is a forceful projectile vomiting after 2 to 3 hours of the first feed, and the vomitus is it is not biliary stained. So this biliary staining, it differentiates it, the vomiting of the pyloric stenosis from that of the duodenal stenosis. So treatment is only through the surgical connection. A typical clinical scenario which you'll be coming across while seeing the patients of the hypertrophic pyloric stenosis is that if a mother brings her 1 month old son into the clinic complaining that his son is vomiting all over the place when he tries to eat something, and she said that her son's vomiting looks like it was shot out of a cannon, यानी कि पिचकारी से जैसे पानी निकलता है वैसे shot out of a cannon. And the relevant physical findings were small, non-tender palpable mass on the right costal margin, and a relevant laboratory finding include barium swallow radiograph showing a narrow pyloric canal, and abdominal ultrasound shows hypertrophic pylorus. So this the most likely diagnosis of such a scenario is the hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Now, now comes the development of the duodenum. So the terminal part of the foregut and the cephalic part of the midgut forms the duodenum. So junction of the two parts is directly distal to the origin of the liver bud. So here is the origin of the liver bud. Now the stomach rotation and rapid growth of the head of pancreas swings the duodenum from its initial midline position to the right side of the abdominal cavity. So most of the duodenum, which is attached initially by the dorsal mesentery, now it becomes attached to the posterior body wall and it assumes a C-shaped curve. Okay, so only a small portion of the distal region of the duodenum, that is duodenal cap, retains an extension of the mesentery and remains unattached to the posterior body wall. So blood supply is the proximal part of the foregut. It is supplied by the celiac trunk. So before the liver, the opening of the common bile duct, it is supplied by celiac trunk, and the distal part it is supplied by the superior mesenteric artery. Now there are certain anomalies of the duodenum. First one is the duodenal stenosis. It is mainly due to the incomplete recanalization or the partial occlusion of the lumen, which produces duodenal stenosis. And the newborn baby with the duodenal stenosis vomits feed that contains bile. So this differentiates it from the case of hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. And there is duodenal atresia, that is, there is a complete occlusion of the lumen. It is the most common form of the intestinal atresia, and it produces polyhydramnios. So on ultrasonography, distended gas-filled stomach is seen, and the duodenum produces a double bubble sign. Double bubble, why? Because one of the gas shadow is just before the stenosed part, and one is just distal to that stenosed part. So there is a double bubble sign. Then is the duodenal diverticula, which usually arises from the second part of the duodenum. So now our next session will be on the development of the liver, pancreas and the spleen.